Hi, everybody. This is Shama, and we're here to talk about this world, the story behind this world. First of all, even before you engage these explanatory videos, you might want to go and check out this world. Go to my YouTube channel, subscribe. The video is right there. Enjoy the craft, enjoy the wordplay, enjoy the video illustrations, enjoy everything, but more so, I would encourage that you take the deep message, muse, meditate, think about it, relate it with your own life, see how, where you stand as far as the subjects being talked about in this world are concerned. I will seek to answer a few questions. I thought to do these videos mainly because it's when you listen to this world, the piece itself, you would, I mean, it's very sensitive, touches on very sensitive issues, and speaks very realistically about the things we engage every day. And might be offensive because most of it is a bit corrective and vigorous and trying to look for this word and very piercing. Yeah, very piercing. Those truths are very piercing, and you might want to, before you judge and before you make conclusions, listen now, come now, listen to these explanatory pieces. It took me at least, I will begin by answering the question on when. And by answering the question when, I will go into the events that triggered the writing of this world, certain statements that were said within that period I was writing this world, certain events, certain occurrences, certain observations I made around my own life and the lives of the people that I interact with on a daily basis, and some observations I made on our society and how they relate with certain things. So I will begin to touch on these things when I answer the question, when was this world written? I will also go into other questions like how was it written, to whom was it written, what is consisted within this world, and what are the subjects that are touched on in this world, and how as well. So, when was this world written? Um, it took me at least, I think, approximately 1.5 years. That should be 2017 to 2018. I need to make this go down. Nitapata nani? It took me approximately at least 1.5 years. That is 2017 to 2018. Mid 2018. The events around the same period were about media exposition. I mean, there was a lot of media exposition on how certain church leaders would masquerade, would concoct, would cut deals behind curtains and show off their miracle working skills on stages for their self-appraisal, for to attract more congregants. And I mean, media was all out about how the church is fallen, how deceived those people who believe in God are. And that's why when you listen to this world, I'm almost very hard on the church setup and leaders who take that posture. So that is one of the events that led to writing of this world. For me, that hit me hard. I mean, it was almost shaming to proclaim your faith during that period. I mean, the church in Kenya went through a lot of hard times. For those who, I mean, are passionate about God's family in the earth, there was a lot of, hey, it was quite something. The shame was tangible. I mean, you almost didn't want to associate with your ministry. You almost didn't want to say who your pastor is. You almost didn't want to evangelize. tell somebody believe in Christ, they would laugh at you, be a laughing stock from them, because they would refer you to certain news posts, and they will refer you to certain Facebook and Twitter posts about how fallen we are and how we are deceived in churches. So that is one of the things that I speak about in this world. And I think that my thoughts around the same issue were, God's intention was always that the church would be a city set on a hill. Micah 4 talks about a mountain raised above all other mountains, where nations will run to and seek to learn God's ways. And seeing how, of course, not that every household of faith within that context was concocting. Not every pastor or leader was taking the same posture as others would. But the world is the world. This world is this world. Everybody now began to say, this is what the church is. This is a picture of the whole church. This is not a certain sector of the church. That was used to generalize how the whole church is. And so it didn't matter who your pastor was. It didn't matter where you went to church. It didn't matter whether you knew these people who were masquerading and deceiving others. Provided you were part of the church, you suffered the same consequences. You suffered the shame of, subscribing to teachings that are really not factual and faith-based. So, for me, my mindset was, what I begin to speak about in this world is not really just to condemn and to paint that picture of how scary this world is and how ugly it is, and bringing the church into the scene. My intention in mentioning certain aspects that were triggered by those events to remind the world and remind the church that that's not where we are, and that's not how we should operate. To remind the church, I speak about fatherhood. I speak about Ahab, King Ahab, and how his name in Greek actually means uncle. And if you go into the context of Elijah and Ahab, you will see how Elijah tries to bring the aspect of fatherhood to the nation of Israel at that period where they were serving Baal. So one of the ministry of Elijah is to, just to paraphrase Malachi 4, 6, 7, and 8, I think, is to connect or reconnect the hearts of the fathers with the sons, and the hearts of the sons with the fathers. So most of what was displayed out there is how our fathers in the faith are deceiving their sons. And so there was that disconnect. There was that disconnect between fathers and sons. And so what I mean to speak into when I mention that thing, especially at the tail end of my piece, is how we need to come back to the relationship of father-son within the church setup, especially in the Church of Kenya. Because now it began to be, who do I trust? Who do I believe? Now I go into my own house, go into my own setup. I don't need to go to church. We've all seen how churches are doing to their congregants and frisking them of their hard-earned monies. So everybody was defaulting into, now I need to, I cannot trust congregants. I cannot trust the whole concept of family, meeting in places of worship. And I think COVID-19 has also brought that up. The whole setup of family and church worship and fellowship and all that. People now began to go into, let me stick to my own God. I don't want these people. I don't want to be taught. Now I'm bringing that that subject to highlight on fatherhood and sonship. Using that scenario to highlight fatherhood and sonship. So that is one of the events that triggered the writing of this world, amongst others. One I can remember is also tied to that event. Where I go to church, my pastor hosts a forum of ministers every Tuesday. I'm not a minister as such. I mean, a church leader. But I used to attend those sessions because I'm part of the media team. So I would attend. And in the attending, I would pick his heart, his spirit, whenever he shared. And in that period, he had a very heavy heart. I mean, he was hit by these expository videos that were displayed on screens. And one of the attitudes that address how I write this world is when I saw how heavy-hearted he was. I mean, he was so disappointed about, over the whole issue, because come to think of it, if church leaders the ways of this world have so infiltrated the minds of people, even church leaders. You can only begin to think about the state of the people they're leading, and some of them up to date believe in those miracles, innocently believe in those miracles. You can't even tell them otherwise. When you tell them otherwise, you're their enemy. When you begin to think about the damage that has been caused, then your heart becomes heavy. And so these matters need to be addressed. One of the philosophies I use in writing my pieces is writing about the silence. My quote is writing about the silence. These things were left after the church was exposed and everything. We didn't even think about the impact it's caused. We didn't think about how certain people were hurt to the extent of not even believing in church, not believing in shepherding, spiritual fatherhood, not believing in the concept of family as God would highlight in every move within the scriptures, and even in our current day. We didn't think about the same. So those are some of the aspects I bring. I also, if I can remember correctly, we had, I think that's still within the period of 2017 to 2018, we had a conference, an annual conference, if I can remember properly, I can't. One of the ministers that was speaking in our conference made a very heavy statement that actually addresses now the other aspects of this world. He said, and I hope I will say this correctly without losing anyone, that time hosts the intentions of God. Time doesn't determine God's intents. Time hosts the intents of God. And he continued to say that God will allow for witty inventions, discoveries, technological upgrades, unfolding of certain platforms, e.g., some of the things that talk about in this world, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, movies, and all these things. God will allow for certain things within certain pockets of time for what he has in mind, or what he had in mind, to be enacted within that specific time for that generation. Okay? So these witty inventions are allowed by God. That is the point. For within certain pockets of time, like the discovery of gold, God was very intentional when he allowed for discoveries in certain pockets of time, for something he had in mind to be enacted within that generation that was existing within that time. Okay? So when you lose God's intention of allowing certain inventions within your time, then you begin to abuse the thing he's allowed. Okay? I hope I can be understood in that line. So he began to say that, of course, this is limited to my own understanding. I think the other trajectories to interpretation of certain things. But he began to say, Facebook, for example, Twitter, Instagram, God has allowed these things in our time for a thing within his mind to be realized. Now, when the church who carry the mind of Christ, that I think is in Ephesians, if I'm not wrong, Ephesians 2:6, going on forward. We have the mind of Christ. We who have the mind of Christ should take the lead in interpreting God's intentions for releasing certain things within our time. But what is happening? The church is the one that is learning secular methods on how to use certain things. That's why instead of the things working for us, they're destroying our kids, they're destroying our parents, they're leading to destruction everywhere. I think, in my own estimate, the destruction is much more than the construction. And the impact that certain platforms will make on certain people will be so negative as opposed or as compared to the positivity within our generation. And he was saying that we need to view certain things, platforms. We dismiss these things as if God is not concerned about how we use them, as if they're supposed to be for fun. And I'm not discounting the fact that we should enjoy certain things that God has released. I don't discount that fact. But we dismiss them as if, they're just apps. It's just something that we are given to enjoy within our setup, when it's actually not. God had an intention. There's a reason as to why God didn't withhold or give Facebook to the Stone Age period. There's a reason as to why you living in this time can enjoy that privilege. And once you begin to define certain things, looking at God's perspective of the same, then you begin to understand the end in mind as God intended it. Not just using it on your free time. You begin to define these things the way God will define them. You begin to wear the spectacles of God, wear the lens of God to see these things from his vantage point. But that is not what we are seeing. And number one on the list should be the church. God has entrusted. And when I talk about the church, I'm not talking about the religious groups. I'm talking about representatives of God in the earth. I'm talking about sons of God in Christ. I'm talking about those people who carry the image of God. Those are the people who have the mind of Christ, who should begin to redefine certain things, bring certain meanings to certain things, e.g., Facebook, WhatsApp, and begin to address how God intended for them to be used. So these are statements that were said that got me into thinking, changed my perspective. I am still searching and engaging conversations with God on how to interpret and how to use these things that are given into my hands. And I think one of the ways that I'm doing it is creating a platform, communicating about these things in the way God would have me do, through poetry, through these videos. This is one way, I think. Pali nimetoka mpaka sahi, and I'm doing something God will be proud of. But we need to engage. We need to engage God. We need to engage God in certain subtle things, certain minute things that you wouldn't think that should be should be God is concerned about. So that is one of the that was one of the, I mean, that I think that statement and that whole concept brought into being the writing of this world. That was one of the things within that period, 2017 to 2018, that sparked the writing of this world.